Well, sorry guys.
Whoa, hello there.
No, I still have some after effects of COVID. I really do. It's not that like I have the fever and the shakes, but the sinuses and the throat issues are still there. It takes a while to get over COVID. I've found out.
Yeah.
So anyway, so if I hack and cough all the way through it, that's unfortunate. It's going to happen a little bit. But I'm watching outside and watching snow come down. How about you, Taylor?
About the same. I got my blinds open. It is
Yeah,
a winter wonderland.
yeah,
I
it's
got a
coming.
little nervous though because it was just like sleet all night, and then all this
Yeah,
morning I was like, "This is a scam," and then it started
Yeah,
snowing, so it's
well,
kind of
it's
nice.
coming. Yeah, it is nice and peaceful and quiet, and all
Yeah,
this other stuff. And then
I feel like I
tomorrow
need
we
to
have to
play
deal with the
Christmas
aftermath.
music.
Please, I don't even like Christmas music at Christmas. I know that makes me a heretic. I know, but still, I don't.
The
Christmas music.
Grinch.
Yeah, just a big commercial enterprise. Anyway, today we're going to talk about teacher burnout. There was an article in today's or yesterday's actually Star Telegram. I'm reaching for it right now, and here it is in my hot hands. But anyway, the the article basically is interesting to me because as a teacher, of course, I can relate to a lot of things that was being said in it. But the gist of the article is one of the trustees of the Fort Worth ISD uh, took on a sub job or two at Northside High School, I believe, or Diamond Hill Jarvis. That's right, get it right. And so I admire her the fact that she was doing it as a sub and not as just like a visiting celebrity or a guest board member or whatever you want to call it. But she actually was in the classroom dealing with the issues that the teachers are dealing with, and she came away with quite a number of things that I think surprised her quite a bit, in particular because of the uh, just how prevalent the burnout is in the school systems. Now, people are listening to this and say, "Well, look, I'm burned out on my job too, and there's nothing unique about school teaching about burnout and whatever else." And I agree. It's not like um, every job doesn't have its degree of fatigue, shall we say? I mean, if I were talking to a lawyer or a doctor or whatever else, anybody else could say the same thing, and that's fine. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But I think what's happening in the public school systems, we're reaching a very, very critical point in the public school systems and about their sustainability, not just financially, which is a little bit of it as well, but also, is this model still working? And as somebody who's worked in both private and public education, and at the collegiate and at the high school level, I can tell you this is a concerning issue to me personally. And the answers are not all just, well, we just need to go to this format or that format. In other words, it's not it's not quite that simple. And so I'll be looking at all these things. But before we jump into all this other stuff about the article and about my thoughts on the matter and all, let's talk about our sponsors first, so we make sure that they don't get burned out. They're never burned out. They're always here for you. There you go. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Hit the link at www.crossfitburleson.com. Check out the website. Check out the pages. Check out all the membership plans, whatnot. And, you look at this nice weather, and it's going to be cold. It's going to be, mushy and gooky outside. So you go outside and work out. Doggone it. CrossFit Burleson. Also, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Shandy Stogsdill, turning transactions into relationships. I know she's got a couple of houses that are closing right now, so she's very busy. It takes some time to do that. And also, she can help you with the new houses. She can help you with existing houses. She can help you where they're being sold. Burleson is just expanding all over, and you need to have a real estate agent that knows her business. We're going to have her on, I think, the last week of February to talk about Burleson real estate, like I do once a quarter, and talk about the rate situation, which she could help you that with her husband Ron. Also, Rex Russell over the mayor of Eagan. I hope he's taking appropriate precautions for the city of Eagan over there, the Metroplex of Eagan. The Russell Wealth Group, hit myfinancialbox.com. Check the link, check out his introductory video, find out a little bit about him, find out what he can do for you for your 401ks or IRAs or retirements or whatever else you have going on. So at the Russell Wealth Group at myfinancialbox.com, hit the link, find out. Also, Kimmy at the Desar yesterday at the BNI meeting, Octavia, 817-789-1622. If you're looking for a health healthy lifestyle, you're looking for a, a weight maintenance plan, you're looking for not just weight loss, but to keep it off, then talk to Kimmy. It's 817-789-1622. A lot of people I found out since she's become a sponsor use Optavia, and they say really, really good things about it. Also, speaking of really, really good things, Southern Gym, Gayla Moore, saw her yesterday as well. Very sweet woman, and she's got your Valentine's needs coming up right here for coming up in about a week from Monday. So you don't want to be left out. She can help you repairs, help you with the designs, help you with uh, new inventory. She could help you the whole 9 yards. So help if you're looking for help on a Valentine's gift, Gail could certainly help you out on the top floor of the Windmiller Building. Taylor, are you back there? I can hear you sniffing and
I am
breathing.
here.
You're breathing and all this.
Sorry.
Are you clogged up like I am?
Yep.
It ain't fun, is
The
it?
stupid allergies. You get
Yeah.
outside and it just goes crazy.
Yeah, I know.
I will hold my breath though, so you don't hear it.
No. Just it's fine. Just jump in anytime. You went to private schools, did you not?
I did
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
taught in private schools, and I taught,
Yeah.
as most of y'all know, in public schools for many, many years. And one thing I learned about the difference between the two is there ain't much difference between the two in certain ways. A lot of
Yeah.
the same problems that existed in the public schools existed in the private schools. So this idea that the private schools are some sort of haven away from the public schools isn't necessarily true. And I'll kind of address those as we go along. And another alternative that's growing rapidly is the homeschooling option, which I must say has made great strides and improvement over the last 2 decades, but it also has concerns, shall we say, that need to be addressed. Okay, so it's not. eh, I'm really going to focus mostly on public school because that's most of my experience. And when I think about my teaching experience over the years, I think about my memories, so to speak, my recollections. I almost always am drawn to BHS and Burleson High School because that's where I spent most of my time. And that's where I draw most of my reference from. And I still have a lot of friends that are either former or current teachers in the system. And my wife works in the system. So I have a pretty good idea what's going on. And uh, there's a lot of things that concern me. The article itself here, I'm looking at the Star Telegram. It talks about how, since particularly with the COVID issues and other state mandates and requirements, how basically teachers are at their breaking point. Now, again, I'm not here to, give a big sob story about teachers. If I were an attorney, I could probably do the same type of podcast, but this is what concerns me is education. It should concern you, even if you don't have kids in the system, even if you don't have kids in this system. You should be concerned about what's going on because the ramifications of what's going on in public education have societal and economic effects that we're feeling right now. And I'll probably hope to address that at the end if I don't run out of time. But what's going on in the school systems is reflecting itself in the workforce and in attitudes of the millennial generation, if you will, and in terms of their willingness and ability to focus on a job and whatnot. Uh, Also, the fact that as an educator at the collegiate level the last few years, I don't see any improvement in the level of preparation that my students will have coming into the collegiate level. Some do, some don't. All right. Some come in and they're fully prepared. They can do whatever they want. And they got some that really, I just had to wonder where they got their education from because it wasn't so much they lacked institutional knowledge or lacked the knowledge about the Constitution or, couldn't recall who wrote it or anything like that. It just the ability to perform in an academic setting concerns me greatly. And this is the workforce that you and I and everybody else will be depending upon as they graduate into the workforce, hopefully. Now, where shall I start, I suppose? To me, one of the biggest changes that's happened in professional education was the ever increasing mandates and edicts from the state of Texas itself. Okay. This is not strictly a complaint about one particular factor. They're all mixed in there. And the state of Texas is a major factor, not just in terms of its financing and funding, but also in terms of what it demands of the teachers is becoming more and more difficult to obtain. For example, one of my biggest complaints about public education is class size. If you were to talk to most parents that are aware of what's going on in the schools, and unfortunately, that's not a large enough percentage. I'll be addressing that in a bit. They'll tell you that one of the things they're most concerned about is their daughter or their son being put in a class of 32 or 33 and basically being overlooked. Either they have certain needs that are not being met, or because the teacher's being basically spread out to meet all these other needs, that even though if their particular son or daughter doesn't have an educational disability or any kind of other detracting factor, they're not getting the attention they need. And when I taught particularly general ed classes that have over 30, it was basically I was lucky if I had a class that basically had decent chemistry that could function more or less pretty well, but that didn't always happen, and you could have some real problems in a large class if the chemistry of the student mix is off, or if the teacher, him or herself, isn't equipped or unable to handle large classes without blowing a fuse. And I guess I want to take a side note on that. A lot of times when I talk to teachers, or I'm sorry, talk to parents or ex-students or whatever about teachers, they can recall the bums. And I'm not going to tell you that every teacher that walks in the classroom is Socrates or is well prepared, well energized, and focused on the job. Like any other profession, there are people that aren't pulling their weight, shall we say. The vast majority of teachers I worked with and dealt with as a parent were competent professionals. Some were outstanding, but there were a few bums in the mix, okay, that didn't belong in the classroom. I'm not here to defend them. So when you hear this podcast or you listen to this show or however you access this material, if you focus on that one or two teachers that is not a good teacher for your son or daughter, or you remember from your high school days, a teacher that was derelict in his or her duty, you're really missing the whole picture of what I'm trying to tell you, because most of the teachers you had, and most teachers I worked with, did the job and did it well. And for most of my students, I like to think they were taught, but also the fact is that we got along fine. They graduated, they moved on with their lives. Some of them still friends with, some of them Facebook friends with. But, the ultimate goal was to get them prepared, and that's what I hope to strive, and that's what my peers hope to strive to do, is prepare you for the next level, whether it be college or the workforce, the military, or whatever else. And again, there's some every now and then to be somebody that would not hold up their end of the bargain. So don't focus on them. Focus on the teachers, really, the ones that you may not even know that well, because they're the ones that are coming into school every day and doing the job. Anyway, I digressed. I got distracted because I didn't wanna make it sound like every teacher that you'll ever encounter deserves a job. They don't, but most do. Okay, back to the matter. State of Texas asks a whole lot more of us than they used to. When I joined the teaching force at BISD in 1988, the state of Texas was present in a sense. They had the standard material we needed to teach, the teach, so to speak. And we had to, make sure that we were hitting those marks and whatever else. But in the last 20 years in particular, the state of Texas has gotten more and more and more demanding of what it asks of schools and school districts without providing the appropriate funding, particularly in the area of testing and remediation and specialized education. I don't mean just special ed. I mean specialized education. I mean different than just having little Johnny or Janie walk into a classroom, sit down, open their books or whatever. We're talking about many students require a different type or level of education than maybe that was being addressed 30 years ago. Now, in some ways that's good. A lot of ways that's good. But the problem is it's not the concept that we need to differentiate our education. That's fine. But the funding doesn't come with it. And the fact that we will lump all these different disparate groups into one classroom and expect a teacher to teach to all of them, all these different groups at the same time, is a juggling match that really just can't be met. For example, here's an example I'm talking about. A typical general education class at high school has probably over 30 students in it. Not all of them do, but a lot of them do. And at the middle school, it's even worse. And, so, like, when I taught middle school many, many years ago, I had huge, huge classes, and this is before the state was mandating all these marks that must be met. Now in a general ed class, let's say we have a class of 30, you're gonna have some in there that are English deficient. The English is their second language. And so you're gonna have to find ways to communicate with them, even if their English is not particularly good. I've had that, particularly in the last few years of my experience there. I had several students from Central America that English was they could barely have a conversation. I was fortunate that I almost always had a class, somebody in there, another Hispanic student that could help me translate. Also, you would have, talented and gifted, okay? Now, that doesn't mean they're in the AP classes. You may have some kids that just really don't care about their education that have been designated as talented and gifted many years ago, and supposedly under the state rules, you're supposed to teach them appropriately in the same class that sitting right next to somebody else. Same thing with emotionally disturbed students. Same thing with special ed students, dyslexic or autistic or, on the spectrum anyway. Also, and then you have the general ed. And so you have these 5 different populations within one classroom, and you're supposed to be able to teach all those populations at the same time. And then that doesn't even count for whatever classroom disruptions that go on. And I don't mean, fist fights in the back of the room. But that rarely happened in my experience. Most of the distractions we had would be like phones, guys goofing off in the back, you know, not paying attention, talking, disrupting the class in those types of ways. And if you sometimes if you just turned your back just a little bit, you would lose control of the classroom. I think that's where the stress comes in because a lot of teachers walk into these type of rooms and they know that if they pause for breath, they risk losing control of the classroom. And so what you're getting in the general ed classes quite often is a more regimented, rote educational experience, not because the teacher's lazy, but because they don't really have any other options. They don't have the time and they don't have the materials and they don't have the ability to focus on these individual subpopulations appropriately because if they spend all the time dealing with the ESL kids or the special ed kids, the 28 others are going to be in some ways not dealt with. And some students can handle that okay, and some cannot. Some were disciplined enough to behave, so to speak, and some took advantage of the situation to try to do, just typical stupid high school stuff. And so that's one of the big problems is that our classrooms are much too big. Now, I've talked to a couple of state reps, particularly when I was on the state board for teacher certification, for educator certification back. I started in 2009, and when I retired, I left the board in 2016. And I would talk to state representatives and the TEA about this type of issue, and they would say things like, "Well, we give you more and more money every session. We can't help how it's spent." And now I'm going to get to that issue much later, but that because that's not totally untrue. But the fact of the matter is, it isn't just a matter of here's a larger check. What's coming with that larger check basically means here's some more money, but here's how you're going to spend it. And so the baseline needs are not really being met because even though they give us more money, they added on to the responsibilities to go with it. And so we're not really meeting the base needs of a lot of these students because of these additional requirements. And example of additional requirements is then multiple documentation you must do, particularly for special ed, particularly for ESL, particularly for uh, students that are in various specialized educational programs, like for emotionally disturbed, et cetera. And let me be very clear. I'll divert here for a second. If I were a parent of an autistic child or a dyslexic child, or my child did not speak English well, by God, I'd want that kind of attention, and and you deserve it. The detention. I'm not resenting the attention that is required. I don't really complain. I never did complain about special ed because thank God my children didn't need special ed, but I knew many people that did, and they have every right to make sure their child gets the appropriate education. That's not my point. I'm not complaining about the parents demanding that special ed be done appropriately. What my point is that to be done appropriately, we're not given the resources as much as we need. And also there's an element of political correctness in how a class is formed. When I first started back in the day, we had classes that would be differentiated for different types of learners, but now that is seen as uh, derogatory to their self-image, so to speak. If he had students that needed remediation, that were slower learners, that were dyslexic, had difficulty with math, whatever else, they're being lumped in with everybody else. And so you could have a kid sitting one kid that's, very adept in math sitting right next to a kid who's basically a numerate, it can't really do math, not because he's lazy or stupid or anything like that, but because of an educational disability, a legitimate one. And back in the day, so to speak, we had classes for those type of students. I remember one of the best teachers I ever saw, 2 of them, in fact, that come to mind, 2 of the best teachers I ever saw in dealing with students that needed real attention and learning. One was Nancy Klein, some of y'all may know her. She would just her talent was dealing with students that didn't learn as fast, but she was very loving and patient. Same was an English teacher named Carolyn Wurzbach, who was very gifted in dealing with those students that had trouble passing the tests, had trouble, with, dyslexia or what others. And they had them in a class in which they could all be taught together, at the same type of rate, at the same with the same processes. And then about the mid-90s, went to what they called mainstreaming, where they said, "No, we're gonna lump them all in together." It helped them accelerate. All this other data and all this other research said that, they'd be better off if they had a class with typical students. And I don't think that's true. Alright, it wasn't my experience. The real reason they did it, I think, is because they didn't want the remedial students to feel somewhat singled out for not being as adept academically as others. From my experience, most of the students that went through that process said they appreciate the fact they had smaller classes, like 10 to 15 maybe, and they had a teacher there that was going to go at their pace and teach them in the way that fit their learning styles best, as opposed to just one size fits all in a generic classroom, which is what we do now. And then we just lump them all in together and say, "Good luck with all that." And the fact of the matter also is, let's say that we went to a situation where we could differentiate students. The only differentiation we have now is between AP and non-AP at the high school level. We don't have talented and gifted at the high school level, and anybody can take AP. I had a lot of students in AP that, may have learning disabilities. They were dyslexic, but they were bright children, and they could do the work. We just had to accommodate certain things, and that's fine. That's fine. That's the appropriate education. But, we in our system anyway, you could choose to be AP or not based because of just your preference, not because you had to qualify to get in. Like, originally, that was the case back in the '80s and early '90s, but by mid-90s, they said, "No, let's just everybody wants to be in, be in." And, I think that's a good thing myself, because you had a lot of students that may not have fit the matrix just so and been included, but they were diligent and hardworking students and that prospered in an AP program. Okay. Now, but again, my point is this: if you have large classes, even if they're all the same type of learner, it's going to be less productive. Less productive. Why? Because these are teenage kids. And I don't mean they're back in the back of the room selling drugs or whatever else. I'm just saying that they're going to be teenage kids. They're going to be silly. They're going to be inattentive. They're going to be on the phone. They're going to be wanting to, make time with the girl next to them. They're going to be, wanting to, be the class clown. All these things happen. And when you have a larger class with a teacher that's already stressed beyond his or her endurance energy wise, you're going to have a real problem. Now, another is, we talked about the documentation. Every year is this one more thing. Every every educational experience, particularly with certain types of students, had to be documented. And then you have all these meetings about it, and you have to go through all these trainings for it. And after a while, you just I don't have time just to do my basic job, which is grade papers and prepare lessons, because I'm doing all this documentation, and I have to document the communications I've made with this person or that person, the parent or this administrator or this counselor or whatever else. When I had special ed students in my class and I would get notified who they were, I would create individual folders so I could document everything. But to be able to do that, there was a lot of Saturdays and or Sunday afternoons I was working. I had access to the building, so I'd go in and work 3 or 4 hours every weekend. And so that's about the only way it could be done. That's when I did my parent communications, was usually Sunday afternoon, because that's the only time I really had time to do that. and that kind of thing. And that's another thing is what with COVID in particular, this has always been a problem, but with COVID in particular, we don't have nearly enough substitutes. And substitutes, God bless them, there's some that are legends, like Mr. Livingston. Many of y'all that have been around BISD know Mr. Livingston. And there are others just like him, other men and women that have been long-term subs, like Mrs. Sims, good friend of mine from church. And they do a good job, but they're not the teacher. They're not gonna advance the educational progress very much. They're not there to do that. They're there basically to implement whatever lesson plan the teacher could throw together at the last minute, particularly if it's a parent with a child that becomes sick in the middle of the night, and then you have to go and try to get this worked out, in about 3 hours. But they're not there to advance the material as much as they are to make sure that at least they're not gonna burn the school down. And maybe make instead of strides in the classroom, they'll make a couple of steps in the classroom. But right now, we don't have any subs. One is we don't pay them enough. Second of all, COVID has taken a lot of them out. And what's happening is because of the teachers at the high school level that I am aware of, because either they are catching it or they're getting exposed to it or their children have, at any given time at Centennial or BHS, we're going to have 20 to 30, 20, around average about 25 absences a class or a day rather. We don't have subs for that. We don't have enough subs. Even if we paid them another $25 to $30 a day, which may help, because that's what they get in Fort Worth, a lot of people don't want to sub. Why? Because it's an unpleasant experience for a lot of them. Sub walks in, the kids think it's going to be Mardi Gras, and they're going to go take off and do all these crazy things and won't have any accountability for it. But second of all is, you know, a lot of the subs are older and they don't want to expose themselves to COVID, or they have children at home. Maybe they may be younger substitutes, but they have children at home that they don't want, bring COVID home to them. So what's happening is the teachers are having to double up in classes. We've had several situations, particularly last year, where, about 3 or 4 classes had to be combined and put into a seminar room or a lecture hall. Almost a daily experience for most of my teacher friends that are still in it is they have to cover for a class that doesn't have a sub for it. Now, this happened in my experience more than once. This is not an unknown thing, but the level of it happening, the constancy of it is much different. Now, back in the 90s, 2000s, whatever, particularly Fridays in the spring when we had track and softball and baseball and golf and tennis and ag and all these other things all out on Fridays. It was quite common for me or other teachers to fill in for a class during our planning time, and that's to be expected. That's to be expected of the teachers to do that on a routine, on a as need basis. But what's happening is it's happening every day now. Teachers don't have time to plan because of COVID, and then you have anywhere from 15 to 20% of your class out because of COVID related issues. And I tell you, nothing takes up a teacher's time more than makeup work. Now that's part of the job again. I don't that's, kids miss because, they've been missing for illnesses all through my career, or they miss because of, like I mentioned, some school event. And having makeup work and having, scheduled times for it and all this other stuff, that's to be expected, and that's part of the paycheck. But to have it at this amount, this this level of having to do makeup tests, makeup work, accommodating schedules, whatever else is, it's very, very taxing, very, very taxing. There's a few other issues, but I want to get on to the second round of sponsors here, and also uh, talk about a couple other issues that may be a bit more closer to home too. I may be stepping on a few toes, but what the heck? All right, thank you to Otto at our place. I hope you're doing well. This is a great day for comfort food. This is a great day to go and get one of those chicken fried steaks. Certainly, those are really good. And good place to get some soup. He brought me some soup when I was ill, and it was outstanding, of course. So Our Place Restaurant on the highway in Allsbury, been there since 1986. And then also we have Chris Notaboom over at Wild Cigar and Culture. They're going to have a big Super Bowl party, so plan on that. I'm going to be there for that. I'm going to drop by because it's a good place. Get yourself a smoke and a good cigar. Also, he has a Valentine's Day special as well. Go by the humidor and pick up some cigars for your favorite gentleman in your life, or if you have a woman in your life that smokes cigars, that's all good too. I don't want to be sexist about this, but if you have a as a gentleman in your life that likes a cigar, go by and pick up a few. Pick up a box over at the humidor. It's huge, and it's got great stuff. Also, gift cards. If you don't know what he smokes or don't know what his favorite drink is, what he's tasting these days, then you can buy a gift card, and then y'all can go by and spend an evening there at Wild Cigar and Culture. And it's a nice place. But check out his webpage and his Facebook page for Super Bowl plans. Also, thank you to Proactive Payment Solutions in Antonio. We're going to have him on a Saturday. Just he and I and Taylor are trying to figure out a good time to do it. But he has a very interesting story, a very pertinent story, more than just his business, but that's part of it, of course. But he has a very interesting story. ProactivePaymentSolution.com. Check it out. Help you with your point of sales operations. Help you get the best rates. Help you set one up. It's a good program to have. It'll save you some money and some time, certainly. Thank you to Payne Beagles over at BeaglesTech.com. It's Beagles Technology Solutions. At BeaglesTech.com, hit the link or his phone number, 817-944-3572, and it'll help turn your home into a smart home. It'll help you with coordinating your computers. He could help you with transfer of information if you want. He could do the whole thing with computers. He's very, very bright and technologically adept. And so check out BeaglesTech.com. And if you're looking to kind of coordinate your home and its electronics and its computer and all that, he's the man to talk to. So BeaglesTech.com or 817-944-3572. Also, Tiffany Griffin, you should have it in your mail. Hopefully the mail won't be delayed because of this weather, but there you are. LocalLifeTX.com is up. You can check that out for the specials and coupons, but the magazine should be in your box this weekend at least. And Tiffany has some big news. Check out her page. I'll let her tell you herself. She has some big news about what's going on with her. Also, I'm going to have her on in a couple of weeks to talk about fundraising for the after party or after prom party for Centennial, which is a very worthy thing to look at. Also, Burleson Radio, Live 365, your voice, your station. It's nice and cold outside. Warm yourself up with some hot tunes and hot podcasts on Burleson Radio and Live 365. Okay, back to the matter at hand. I mentioned about the absences and the COVID and whatever else. I'm not going to get into all the mask issues and all this other stuff, but it seems like the schools have been ground zero for a lot of the culture wars, masks, critical race theory, what's taught in the classroom, content, whatever else. One of the questions my friend Jordan DeWald asked me is, what is the role of the State Board of Education? Well, the State Board of Education does create the curriculum and choose the textbooks for the classroom and choose the curriculum material. Now, they are subject to legislation from the state of Texas itself, which this past session did mandate a ban on the teaching of critical race theory. Now, I've already talked about that on 2, 3 other podcasts, and I invite you to go back in the archives. It was about maybe 2 months ago. But as far as critical race theory in Burleson schools and most other schools, it's really not an issue. But it is seen as the flashpoint of the culture wars. You saw what happened in Southlake, and you've seen what's happened in other school districts in other states. But we do have politicians and we do have administration at the state level that see the classroom as a means of not just teaching the basics, but also, I don't want to say indoctrination, but that's about the only word I can think of, but teaching a certain paradigm or mindset that may not be educationally functional or appropriate. My biggest problem with the legislation about critical race theory is not that they banned it, because I never taught critical race theory, but I did teach about the horrors of slavery and the horrors of Jim Crow. And the way that law is written, I'd have to balance it out with how Jim Crow is a good thing if I wanted to maintain just the letter of the law. Now, the authors of the law said that's not the intent, but that's what this says on the page. And theoretically, I could have a parent come in there and say, well, I see you assigned a reading from Martin Luther King. Here's one from, some white supremacist, and I demand equal time. That ain't happening. But the teachers are the ones caught in the middle of all this. And so they think that, the people think that the teachers basically are just going to be functionaries that are going to be told how to teach, what to teach, and when to teach it. And as far as any kind of personal input or their educational understanding of the material or any kind of academic background they may have in this material, That's to be set aside if there's going to be some other type of agenda at work here. And there are the politicians that run the school systems, and but not just Texas, but in every state, have agendas. Some very liberal agendas, some very conservative agendas, but they do have agendas. Now, at the very end of this, I'm going to talk about um, parental involvement and whatnot, and do they have a role? Which they do. Okay, but uh, we're going to get into that situation. But the point is that the teacher in the classroom is being whipsawed by these various cultural forces between parent demands, between administrative demands, between the state of Texas, between, the culture demands, the cancel culture or the woke culture or whatever you want to call it. So they're caught in between. I'm about to sneeze, guys. Oh,
Bless you, bless you.
well, that's part of the drill of allergies and COVID. But anyway, um, here's another one that this article talks about. Towards the end of the article, when Miss Martinez was being on her fact-finding mission, she was talking about the lack of financial incentives to stay in the classroom, and I've always said that. And this is where I started stepping on toes a bit. The system should not financially incentivize a situation in which I can make more money outside the classroom than in it. I like to think of myself as a pretty decent teacher, but if I wanted to make more money, the answer is not being even a better teacher. The answer is I have to leave the classroom. I could be the best teacher that Burleson High School ever saw, which I was not, but I could have been, and it would have gotten paid the same as somebody next door who was showing films and handing out worksheets. There's no financial incentive to stay in the classroom. We stayed in the classroom because of other factors, other incentives, being with the students, being involved with the material, feeling like you're helping people progress with their lives, things of that nature, more intrinsic, intangible things. But if I wanted to make more money, then I'd have to leave the classroom. The reason I could make more money is because I got a graduate degree in political science and was able to teach at Hill College, and I still do. I've been teaching at Hill College since 2004. I've been teaching night classes since 2004. Now, I don't complain about that, but if I wanted that extra money, that's how I got it. It's a second job, and that's how most of my teacher friends who need more money, who want to stay in the classroom, what they do is they get a second job. Now, not every teacher is, destitute and poor. I don't want to give you that impression at all. The pay is adequate, but if I want more than adequate pay, I'll have to move to an administrative position, which I may or may not be suited for, or temperamentally, or whatnot. I may not have the opportunity to get the educational requirements that it takes. The master's in supervision, administration, education, etc. That would allow me to leave the classroom. And I knew several people that left the classroom somewhat reluctantly, but they said, I have a wife and children that need financial support, or I'm a single mother and I have 2 children. I need to move up because I can't make any more money in the classroom. That's the biggest thing to me. What's always struck me as odd is that if I could wave my magic wand, the highest paid people in the system would be at the campus level, not at the administrative level. Here's where we get to the toe crunching, I guess. We have right now, as I speak, 11 superintendency openings in the system. In the state of Texas, DFW, rather, I'm sorry, to be specific. In DFW, there are 11 superintendent openings. Fort Worth, Dallas, HEB, Northwest, Plano, Richardson. They pay a lot. They pay a whole lot. And if we want to keep talent here, we have to pay more. Well, the problem is, if I could rearrange the system, the highest paid people will be on the campus level, not at the downtown or down the street administrative level. I liken it to like a baseball team. The manager is one of the lowest paid guys on the team, and the ball players are what make it win or lose. And how do I phrase this? You could be the best manager in baseball there is, but if you don't have talent on your team, you're going to get fired. You could be a kind of a lackadaisical bum, but if you got Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig in your lineup, you're going to win ball games, and they think you're great. The talent in the classroom is paramount. The talent at ground zero with the teachers, the ability of the teacher to communicate the information, to maintain an orderly classroom, to do the job in an orderly fashion, that's the ball game. And it doesn't matter what kind of curriculum design you have. It doesn't matter what kind of paradigm you're following. It doesn't matter, whose book you read. Boy, that used to drive me crazy about administration is that some somebody high up would read a book and they get their chili hot about it, and we'd have to go through all this training about it. It doesn't matter what goes on down teacher. If you don't have the teacher in the classroom, then you're not going to have it happen. And if you have a situation where down the street is somewhat dysfunctional and the curriculum isn't very good, if you still have talented teachers, they could do the curriculum and they could do the planning and they could do the training. So that's my point about the educational system. We have it backwards. We shouldn't have a situation where the least paid person, professional person in the whole system is the classroom teacher. Period. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter if I got the best superintendent there ever was, or the best downtown administration there ever was. If the campus level administration isn't on par, then the whole thing breaks down. If the classroom situation isn't good, the whole thing breaks down. So if I could be king of this state, which I think I deserve, I would I would reconfigure how the financial pay is done. And along those lines as well, I would also find a way to remove teachers from the classroom that don't belong there. Okay, a lot of the people that have criticisms about let's pay the teachers more is, well, why should we pay this guy anymore? He's not doing the job. That's a legitimate complaint. I'd find a way that the teachers who really were doing the job got paid more than the person next to them that wasn't getting paid as much. I would make sure that the teacher, ace teacher, he or she that's really doing the job and leading the campus is getting paid more than somebody just filling the spot. So that's that part of it. Also, I mentioned about the lack of time. With all these things I've been talking about, most teachers don't have time to really do the job. It really doesn't. They don't have time to really focus on the lessons or focus on the needs. Would I lengthen the school day? Not necessarily. I might lengthen the school year because we do have to. You think about it this way: we start in third week in August. We get out around Memorial Day, and you say, "Well, that's a long time." Well, really, take out spring break, Thanksgiving break, take out 2 weeks of Christmas. You take out the week of testing, take out the week prior to testing where you have to remediate. You take out all the interruptions to a classroom schedule, drug awareness rallies or school related events like pep rallies or whatever else. Or you have special speakers or, this or that. Or then you have today like weather situations. You're boiling your educational experience down to about 7 months. And that's not enough to cover what we need to cover to be sure they're adequately prepared. So, yeah, again, for this extra money, I would lengthen the school year a little bit, but that doesn't make me very popular, but that's fine. But another thing, again, I want to reiterate what else I'd do is number one, lower the class sizes. Okay, we'll get to back. Lastly, we need to talk about the students themselves. No one wants to talk about that elephant in the room, and that elephant in the room is often that the students themselves can be difficult to teach and to manage. Now, I know that a lot of people that would listen to the show say, "Well, that's what you signed up for." Absolutely. But that doesn't give students and their parents a blank check to basically say, "Here, we're sending it off to school and have at it." The students that are soul killers, the student soul killing activity isn't, you know, fist fights in the hall or drugs in the bathroom. Okay, those are terrible things. It's that apathetic student that you work with, and they won't budge an inch. It is the girl that gives you a snotty retort when you tell her to put her phone away, and maybe she won't do it. It's the young man in the back of the room acting foolish, knowing that nothing's gonna happen to him. It's the disrespect that many students showed. Not so much, it didn't have to be overtly disrespectful, even though that occurs more and more and more. It's just the disrespect of what the teacher up there is trying to do, the lack of attention, the lack of concern, the lack of preparing for any kind of academic activity, tests, homework, etc. All these things um, wear on the teacher badly. And they're sitting there at night or on the weekend, early in the morning, trying to prepare lessons. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking, why? They don't care. Okay. They're going to look at that and go, why am I doing this? Okay. Taylor, I says, failed to connect to chat server. What's happening here?
You're still live. Your internet connection is a little bit slow,
Mm-hmm.
but we still hear your audio, and it's still
Well, so
maybe
most
a little bit
people,
choppy on video.
well, on video, but the podcast will be fine, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
your audio's been fine the whole time.
okay, fine. Okay, good. Yeah, that's fine.
Winter weather.
It is what it is, but I think most people now access through podcasts anyway, so, okay. I don't fret about it as much as I used to. But back to the matter at hand, the soul-killing attitudes and behaviors, again, are not aggressive. They are passive. They don't You have students who just don't care because they know that they're gonna graduate. I can't The last few years in particular, I can't tell you how many students I had that basically said, "What does it matter? I'm gonna get a certificate anyway," and they did. Because the state of Texas put such penalties upon schools for not graduating students that we're gonna get them across that stage. We're gonna do everything we can. We're gonna drop grades. We're gonna put them in a catch-up program. We're gonna basically just fudge grades in a sense. We're just gonna, as far as teachers getting pressured to pass students, that is a thing. That is a real thing. If I had a student who was failing, I'd have a situation where the question would be, "Well, what are you doing about it?" My answer would be, "Well, I'm assigning stuff, and he's not doing it, and I'm putting zeros in the grade book. That's what I'm doing about it." That's not gonna be a sufficient answer. It hasn't been for a while. It's like an old joke, about the old banker joke. You owe him $100, you have a problem. You owe him $1,000,000, he has a problem. That's what happens here. I have friends that say a third of their class at any one time is failing, and they're the ones that are being called in. Why are they failing? It's almost never because they don't understand the material. It's almost always because they're not doing the material. And we don't really want to blame the students because, in effect, we're blaming the parents. And parents don't wanna, think along those lines. Most of the parents that I dealt with that I would say, I had to deal with very, very rarely were aggressive, hostile, or intense. That was I c I don't know how often, maybe less than 5 in my 30-year career, 5 times. So that never really happened. It was, too often to be, "Well, I don't know what to do about him." "Well, I'm trying, I'll talk to him about it." Or, or in effect, they'd say, "That's what we pay you for." And that's not the case. The students need to be held accountable. The reason why I've always said that many students don't respect a high school diploma is not that it's too hard, but because it was too easy. They basically think they slept for 5 years or 4 years or however long they've been there, and they got a piece of paper then said they've been educated. And they said, "Well, how worthy is this? I didn't do a thing for 4 years, and I got the same thing as the valedictorian did." Now, the cost of that attitude comes very apparent very quickly when that apathetic student tries to go to Hill College or UTA or something like that, or they try to get a job and they try to take the same attitudes towards their work as they did at school. A manana attitude, I'll take care of it when I'm around to it. I don't feel good. I'm not coming to school or I'm not coming to work. That's what I'm talking about at the very beginning. The lack of accountability in the high schools is showing up in the workforce. It's showing up in the military. It's showing up in the university levels because they basically spent 4 years in an unaccountable situation, and to try to maintain that accountability afterwards, try to impose that accountability afterwards is gonna fail. I talk to people, that are employers, and they call me and they said, "Do you know anybody that needs a job? Because I can't get people to stay at work because they don't understand that you need to show up and work on time, appropriately dressed and groomed. They don't understand that when you're on the clock, you don't spend it on the phone." They don't understand that people's livelihoods are at stake because they're not the ones accountable for it. They know that, they think that they're gonna be able to get a job doing whatever because that's what they're entitled to almost. Now, I know I sound like the old man shouting at clouds, and I'll risk sounding like that, and I'm fine with that because I know what I'm seeing. Now, what I've described to you in terms of student body doesn't apply universally. I have had students that I did up to the very end that were hardworking, dedicated, focused, had goals, went to universities, or they went into the military, or they started their own companies and they worked hard. And I'm saying that student still exists, but more and more and more of what is entering into the university or workforce level is unprepared. And it isn't because they don't know what Article 2 of the Constitution is. It's because they don't either have the work ethic or the understanding that there's an accountability at the end. And parents, we have to shoulder some of that as well. If we're not holding our kids accountable, to expect the teachers to do so in our system is not going to happen. The only way that this is where I get in about parent involvement. Parents must be involved in the system. This idea that the former governor, fortunately former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, said that parents don't need to be telling teachers what to teach. It isn't that so much as that the parents need to be involved with their kids' education. They need to keep up with what's going on. And if they have a problem with the teacher, don't go to the principal and bellyache. Go contact the teacher and do so in a civil manner and say, "Hey, here's what I'm hearing. Is that true or not? And if it is or it isn't, let's deal with that." Contact the teacher first. If you have a teacher you don't think is doing the job, contact him or her. If you're not getting anywhere, then you go up the ladder. Second of all, find out what your kids are or are not learning. Find out if they have any homework, and find out if they're doing homework. Check the kids' grades. It's easy to do on Skyward, which is what we have, but I'm sure your school districts have something similar. Find out why you have a 0 in this class, and don't automatically assume it's because of a teacher. And that I think too many parents are afraid of their children withholding their affection and love for them by holding them accountable. Well, that's not gonna happen. They're gonna love you for it more later. They may, piss and moan about it now at age 16, but when you're 16, you're stupid by definition. And so the ones that when they're 26 and they're holding down a job and they're paying their bills on time and whatnot, then that's when they'll look back and thank you. Parents need to be involved. As far as the curriculum, input is the parents need input in the curriculum. Okay, I'll just put it that way. They don't need to dictate curriculum. If they have a concern about curriculum, that most school districts I know have options. If your English teacher signs a book that you're not comfortable with, there's an option. Um, I know that's BISD policy, but you know if you're uncomfortable with it, talk to the teacher and say, what's the goal of this particular academic endeavor or this particular uh, lesson that you're teaching, and have a conversation, not a rant. But yeah, teachers and parents need to work together, not just to create what is being taught or how it's being taught, but they need to make sure that their kids are going to put their phones away. And if they don't, there's going to be consequences. If the kids need to know that if they act the fool in the back of the classroom, there's going to be consequences. And I haven't even touched the total and complete lack of discipline that goes on in many high schools across this country. I haven't even gotten to that. I'm running out of time anyway. But the thing about it is, I can't tell you what is more defeating as a teacher to have some kid act like a fool in the classroom. You send them down to the office, and they come back within 20 minutes with words of wisdom getting given to them. You got some. I remember one time. This is not recent, but there was a situation where a kid almost assaulted a teacher. They were back in the classroom the next week. I, you know, I have a former student. Some of y'all know her. She's a counselor. She was beaten by a former student. Not former student, well, former now, but student at that time. She was beaten about a month ago by a student on her campus. Now that student is in juvenile detention, fortunately. But what kind of system allows those kind of students on campus to assault adults or each other? I can't tell you how disheartening it is to basically have a situation where if you as a teacher can't depend upon accountability either from the parent or from the administration, then you're going it's going to be very, very difficult to get up in the morning and do that job. I can't tell you how dispiriting it is when you have something, an assault on your integrity, blatant disrespect shown to you in front of other students. And the other students see nothing's being done about it. How that infects the whole classroom and the whole school. We need to get back to a system where students are held accountable and there are consequences, even if they're painful consequences. And they need to be painful for those that do the disruption, not for the administration. And again, I haven't even talked about what the role of federal government is and how they've interfered with this. That's a whole nother topic. I guess I'll do that some of the time. Maybe next week, I'll have time. Next week, I do have a couple of guests tentatively lined up where we're trying to negotiate which days they can make and that kind of stuff. So I have a couple of guests, hopefully. But I'm going to have to leave it here because I got more to say, but I want to sum it up this way. Parents, you need to be involved in your children's education. You need to hold your children accountable. You need to hold your teachers accountable. Okay. You need to hold your teachers accountable. Make sure they're doing their job. But make sure you're doing your job too. And make sure your son or daughter is doing their job too. That's the only way this system's going to work. That's the only way it's going to work. I think next week I'll do part 2 about the differences between public and private schools. And they're not always, it isn't one of those situations where private schools are also always going to be better by comparison. They have their own issues as well. But anyway, I hope you send this, particularly share this with your teacher friends. Because I think they need to have this heard. I think they need to have this heard because they need to know that it's not gone unnoticed. And we thank you for your time. Let's talk about the sponsors real quick at the end here. Thank you, Daniel. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Hit the CrossFitBurleson.com web link for websites and memberships. Thank you, Shandy, over at the 817livecom.com page. Stogsdale Group, turning transactions into relationships. Thank you for all what you're doing for us and the community. And we'll have you on very soon, as I've been saying. Same with Rex. We'll have him on very soon as well. Hit myfinancialbox.com, hit the link and get to know him. You'll be glad you did. Same with Kimmy Etheridge at Optavia, lifestyle and health plan, 817-789-1622. Call for Kimmy. Ask for Kimmy. She's very sweet. You'll be glad you did that too. Also, Gala reminds you over at Southern Gym, it's Valentine's coming up. So if you're looking to buy your loved one a piece of jewelry or have it repaired for him or her or have it appraised or whatnot, she can do all of it. She's a full-service jeweler on the top floor of the Windmiller building off Hidden Creek. Thank you to Auto at Our Place, Highway in Osbury. Thank you for all you do. Like I said, get you some comfort food, get you some of that chicken fried steak or some of that stew and all this. It's good for that. So Our Place. Thank you, Otto. Thank you to Chris over at Wild Cigar and Culture. Remind you, the Super Bowl party, also gift cards available for Valentine's. Go get your loved one some cigars or a gift card for a couple of drinks, and I guarantee you, the man and/or woman in your life will be thankful you did. Also, thank you to Antonio over at proactivepaymentsolutions.com. He could help you with the point of sales operations, help you set one up, help you save some money on it, and it'll help get your business more efficient. Same thing with your home with paying Beagles at Beagles Tech. At Beagles Technology Solutions, he'll be able to help coordinate your home and its technologies and whatnot. BeaglesTech.com or 817-944-3572. So you're looking to make your home a smart home, save you some time and some money and some effort. Payne can do all of it for you, from consulting to design to implementation. Thank you to Tiffany. I look forward to seeing your latest magazine on Local Life. We'll see her on the show very soon, as soon as we can get something scheduled. And she's very busy this time of month, of course. Local Life magazine's out. LocalLifeTX.com is up, and so you can check it out. And lastly, Live 365 Burleson Radio, playing your hot tunes in a very cold day. So there you are. So, Taylor, on the podcast and whatnot, is it going to be more or less a uniform presentation?
Yeah.
How
as
about
always.
Facebook?
You had a little pause in there on your, but you still heard the audio. So,
Okay, well, do what you can, guys. It's just a cold day and wonky technology. It's lovely. I saw that Facebook is taking like a big hit financially today, so maybe that's
oh
why.
no,
I know
yeah.
you busted up about that. But anyway, share this with your friends. I look forward to seeing y'all next Monday.